In section 4.2, we're going to talk about slope of a line. This section contains a lot of material. It's actually pretty easy, but students do have problems with this section because you need to study and memorize the formula to finding slope. So let's start with our key idea. Alright, there's a lot of stuff here. So my suggestion first would be to copy all of it down, pause the video, copy it all down, and then start playing it again and listen to what I'm saying. The slope, M. M is the letter that means slope. The slope of a line. Now slope just means slant. It's how high up or how much something falls. It's like an incline or a decline. A slope of a line is a ratio, which means it's a fraction, of the change in y, which is called the rise, to the change in x, which is called the run. Think of it this way. Rise is the y-axis up and down. X is the run, which is left and right. When you rise, you go up or down. When you run, you either go right or left. Between any 2 points, now your points here are going to be x, it's going to be called x sub 1, y sub 1, and x sub 2, y sub 2. Those are not exponents. That's only telling you that you have 2 different x values and 2 different y values. So if you look at your graph, this line, you can either, this point right here, this is the point, x1, y1. This point here is x2, y2. Rise over run. Rise is represented by the red. You can either go up and then to the right, or to the right and then up. The red is always going to go on top. How much change is in y? The rise is going to be in top. All you have to do is subtract your y values. Your run, which is your x, which is the first numbers, is going to be on bottom. So to find the change in x, you subtract one x value from another. One more thing you need to know is this. Down here in this box, if a line goes left to right and it goes up, then you have a positive slope. When your line goes left to right, it falls, it has a negative slope. All right, the first part of your homework, you don't need to draw these graphs in your notes. I just want you to watch. But you need to write down the answers in your notes so you know what you're doing. A and B. You need to first describe the slope, then find it. So in A, what can you tell me? Describe just the slope. What's happening to it? Well, the line goes up from left to right. Therefore, what can you tell me about the slope? You should tell me that the slope is positive. So right there, you just explained to me what the description of the slope is. So that's part 1. Part 2 is finding the slope. Remember, slope is rise over run. Rise over run. Get that stuck in your head. Rise over run. So there's 2 ways you can find slope. Rise is how many up or how many down you go to get from one point to the next. Remember, you're going from one point to another point. Here's a point. That point is -3, -1. This point is 3, 4. So how do I get from this point to this point? I go up and over, up to the right, up to the right. How many up do you go? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I go up 5. That means I have rise of 5. Rise of 5. If you go up, it's a rise. If you go down, it's a negative. I go to the right. If you go to the right, you go positive. If you go to the left, you go negative. Right, right, run. This is run. Rise over run. Rise over run. Run. How many spaces do you go to the right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have a run of 6. Rise over run. Rise over run. What's my rise? 5. What's my run? 6. Put it as a ratio. 5/6. You're done. That's all you do. Or you can subtract your y's and subtract your x's. Remember, this is x1, y1, x2, y2. I subtract my y's first. I subtract my y's first. So I'm going to subtract 4, which is the 4 right here, minus, and then the -1 that's down here, -1, over. Now I subtract my x's on bottom. 3 minus a -3. 3 minus -3. 4, well, a minus and a negative make a plus, so this becomes 4 plus 1 over 3 plus 3, which gives me the same answer as 5/6. Part B, I want you to describe the line and find the slope. What can you tell me about the line? Basically, you're going to tell me positive or negative slope. Left to right, it goes downhill. Downhill. Therefore, your slope is? The slope is negative. So now let's do rise over run. Rise over run. Now I'm going to go from left point to my right point. Left point to right point. To go here, I have to go down to the right. Down to the right. So if you go down, that's your rise. To the right is my run. How many did I go down? I went down 1, 2, 3. So because I went down, my rise is a -3. To the right, I go 2 to the right. So rise over run. Rise over run, that gives me the ratio of -3/2. If you did it mathematically, I subtract my x's or my y's on top, my x's on bottom. So y, remember this again, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. I'm going to say this one right here. Let's say this one is x sub 1, y sub 1. That's a hard green to see. I'm going to change it to blue. X sub 2, y sub 2. So I take my y's and subtract them. So -2 minus 1 over 1 minus -1. That gives me -2 minus 1, which is -3. And this is 1 plus 1, which is 2, which gives me the same answer. In number 2 and number 3, we're going to do the exact same thing, finding the slope. But I want you to do it mathematically. Now you have to memorize this. Remember, you subtract your y values on top. That's your rise. You subtract your x values on bottom. That's your run. So we have to first, and number 2, you don't have to write these problems down, but I want you to write the points and the work. So this point right here is, let's see, -1, 0. This is easy. This point here is over 1, down -4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep, so 1, -4 is that point. So we have the 2 points, 1, 0, and 1, -4. It does not matter which one you want to be x1 and y1 or x2 and y2. It doesn't matter. But we're going to subtract. Here's our formula. y2 minus y1 and x2 minus x1. Once again, all I'm doing is taking this and plugging in my numbers. So y2 is -4. y1 is 0. x2, x's go on bottom. Once again, y's, the second numbers go on top. Subtract them, the first numbers, your x's go on bottom. So x2 is 1, x1 is -1. So -4 minus 0 is -4. Remember, the negative gives you a plus, so 1 plus 1. 1 plus 1 gives you 2. So -4 over 2. That means you can simplify that. -4 divided by 2 is -2 over 1, or just -2. My slope is -2. You could have also done down to the right, down 4 to the right 2, you would get the same thing as negative 4 divided by 2, which is negative 2. Number 3, identify your points. The first one is 1, 3. The second one is 3, 3. It doesn't matter which one you want to start with subtracting. Your slope, subtract your y's. These are your y's. The first ones are your x's. The second ones are your y's. So subtract the y's on top, subtract the x's on bottom. You could have also done this. You could have also done 3 minus 3 and 1 minus 3 on bottom. It doesn't matter. Same answer. 0 on top, 2 on bottom. But here's the problem. 0 divided by anything gives you 0. My slope is 0. Notice what kind of line that is. It's a horizontal line. Example number 4. Notice what your line looks like. Your line is a vertical line. So let's identify your points. This point is 2, 3. This point is 2, negative 1. So 2, 3, 2, negative 1. I'm going to call that x1, x1, y1, x2, y2. I'm going to subtract my y's on top, so that's this one and this one. So y2 minus y1, and on bottom I subtract my x's, x2 minus x1. Negative 1 minus 3 is negative 4. 2 minus 2 is 0. Any number divided by 0, do not tell me 0. That's a bad thing to say. Any number divided by 0 is undefined. So believe it or not, you've learned your other key idea here. Here they are. Here are your two major important things. The slope of every horizontal line is 0. The slope of every vertical line is undefined. So if your line goes up and down, it's a slope of undefined. If it goes left or right, it's automatically a slope of 0. And I just realized that I made a typo here. This should be is. This is your last example, and I do want you to write this table down. Now remember, your tables can either be going left or right. Your tables could also look like this. It's completely what the problem wants to do. It does not matter. So your table could also look like this. Now, I'm going to tell you, you should find this incredibly easy. Change in y over change in x. You have a few ways to get there. You can subtract, which should be a really easy thing to do. Pick any two of these points. So I don't care what you pick. You could pick these two. 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 Doesn't matter. I'm just going to pick the first two. 1, 8 and 4, 6. All I'm going to do, this is it. Literally, this is all you have to do. Change in y. Subtract your y values. They go here. 8 minus 6. Subtract your x values. They go here. 1 minus 4. Now notice something. I started with the 8 on top. Therefore, on bottom, you have to start with the same ordered pair. You cannot do 8 minus 6 and 4 minus 1. You cannot do that. 8 minus 6 goes on top. 1 minus 4 goes on bottom. Now, you could have switched that around and done it this way. Started with the 6, 6 minus 8, and then 4 minus 1. So I started down here. 6 minus 8 and 4 minus 1. You just have to go the same way. Now notice what happens here. In the top one, 8 minus 6 gives me 2 over negative 3, which means my slope is negative 2/3. Over here, 6 minus 8 is negative 2, 4 minus 1 is 3, also gives me negative 2/3. So your slope is negative 2/3. Here's another way to get the slope of negative 2/3. So a slope of negative 2/3 can also be done in this. Change in y. change in y, change in y. What's happening every time from one ordered pair to the next? Your change in y goes down by 2. Your x value from 1 to 4, 4 to 7, 7 to 10. What's happening? Your change in y is 3. Therefore, change in y over change in x gives me the same value as my answers of negative 2/3. So you should know this line is going to be going downhill, but the slope is negative 2. In summary, this is what you must memorize. If a line goes uphill left or right, it has a positive slope. If a line goes downhill left or right, it has a negative slope. If you have a horizontal line, you don't have to do any work, it's just 0. If you have a vertical line, once again, don't do any work, your slope is undefined.